Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the AME Food Testing Show. Today's topic, how to get 100% on your SQF audit. Today's guest is Dr. Karl Kolb, Chief Science Officer from the High Sierra Group in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. Dr. Kolb has a national practice in food safety consulting with many years of offering consulting services and audit services for the major audit and governing bodies. Dr. Kolb, can you please update us on your current activities?
Hi, Andy. Thanks for having me on the program. It's nice to be able to come back and talk about what I believe is important. Currently, the state-of-the-art certification program is what is referred to as a GFSI audit, Global Food Safety Initiative audit. And within the Global Food Safety Initiative arena, there are 7 to 14 different audits that are approved by GFSI to be used as a true quality platform for certifying a food plant, a food handling facility, or even a agricultural practice. One of the attributes is that this is a completely robust, true quality audit, unlike so many of the checklist audits that we see today by many of the popular third-party audit agencies. A quality audit is one in which contains a standard, a policy, a procedure, a specification, a report, validation of the information, and verification that the activity is being conducted as stated to satisfy the standard. One note here for the casual listener is that if you go to someone and they ask you to do a GFSI audit, they should not specify which one of the platforms to use in the GFSI program. They should allow you to select, since they are all robust audits, which one best fits your type of operation. Let me give you an example. You have things such as SQF certification, Safe Quality Foods. You have BRC, the British Retail Consortium. You have Primus, GFS. You have Global Gap and Dutch HACCP and a number of others which are quality audits. No one should specify which one of those you do. They should specify, though, that they want you to do a GFSI audit, and then you select a particular audit that best fits your operation. It's much like, if you pick the wrong one, it's much like trying to put a size 10 shoe on a size 12 foot. It doesn't fit very well, and it's very uncomfortable. So you want to make sure you select the correct audit. If your client wishes you to do a particular audit, you really need to question their intentions, especially if that particular audit doesn't seem to fit what you're doing. These are important because a GFSI audit is a true quality audit. In other words, it's very robust. A checklist audit, as many people know, is simply they walk down a list of questions looking for this report, this policy, that procedure. But there's very little understanding or criteria required to justify the standards being met. It's a checklist. Do they have a micro program? Yes. Then you move on to the next question. Do they have a sanitation program? Yes. And you move on to the next question. Do you have a training program? Yes. There is some inspection of the program to see if everyone is there. There is some inspection of the program to see that if there is a report, it's being used. There's very few interviews of the specific people who have to perform these. There's very little check and balance to see if the program is really working as designed. So a robust quality audit is one in which is much like your accounting system in a large company, whereby you have checks and balances, there's dual accounting, there's repetition. There's things which show that the process is working. If it breaks down, there's courses of action to determine what is the root cause and how do we fix it. There's a number of self-audits. There are a number of things that go on with that to encompass the entire business to say, if you're in the food business, then you should be doing these things. Now, GFSI audits have been developed by a number of companies who are very tired of the checklist audits because there's no robustness to them. And places like Walmart and Costco subscribe to these because the checklist audit fails consistently. Many checklist audits you can prepare for almost overnight. But a good, true quality, robust GFSI audit takes more than a year or two to plan, develop, train, ensure it's working properly, to walk up to an inspection. And so they're very, very important because they do demonstrate, they do have the ability to reduce the likelihood of a contamination event in the marketplace, and they most definitely require of the company their full dedication to do them properly.
Dr. Kolb, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So what is an SQF audit, given the parameters that you've just outlined?
Well, that's a safe quality food audit. It's probably the Cadillac of all the audits because they have prescribed exactly what is expected on a risk basis. In other words, it won't tell you to test the water once a month or to a particular standard, but it says what is the risk involved, what is the commodity, what's your location, what kind of facility do you have, and what is the risk involved, what does local authorities tell you the water level or water standard should be. And so in SQF, it's risk-based, it's very intense, it covers everything you do. It's probably the toughest of all of the audits, and it's normally conducted by audit agencies such as TUV and Silica, who have spent a considerable amount of time and money ensuring that each inspector that conducts the SQF audit is completely trained and fully qualified to inspect in your particular area. These folks, men and women who are the auditors and not inspectors, will spend 2, 3, 4, 5 days at your location examining records to make sure that everything works as it should. They'll go out on the floor, they'll be there at night, they'll talk to many, many employees to see if they're actually doing what they say they're supposed to be doing. So the SQF comes in 3 levels, SQF level 1, 2, and 3, 3 being the highest level. It's a quality audit, whereby 2 is a food safety audit and 3 is an entry-level audit. The SQF is the Cadillac of all audits. The next most rigorous audit is the Global Gap, and then probably the BRC. I'm very proud to say that I have maximized all 4 of those audits in my career. I've received 100% on SQF, BRC, Global Gap, and Primus GFS. So I'm very proud of this fact, and we've developed a particular skill within our corporation, the High Sierra Group, for assisting people to develop winning audits. And there are some criteria, Andy, with regard to, or hallmarks or benchmarks, as you might want to say, regarding how do you achieve, a perfect or 100% score.
Well, that's a great issue to bring up. What I'd like to do, if you could for a minute, is tell us why are SQF audits important, particularly to clients that are interested in buying food products?
Well, they're important because the checklist audits only say you have a program. They don't see if the program's working at all. You could put a program in overnight, have it inspected the next day, receive a passing score, and you may be shipping garbage, pathogen-laced food, because the inspector never really spent any time on the floor talking to people, looking at things, or they may never have spent the time running down records to see if actions were truly taken. Whereby the GFSI audit, of which SQF is one of those, is a true quality system. It has to have validation and verification. It needs to be a continuing improvement process. And most importantly, it has to demonstrate robustness. In other words, you have a job description, they're working that job description, there's a training program against that job description. That job description reflects the activities of the plant. The activities of the plant are defined by policy, procedures, specifications, and reports. And all that culminates in addressing every single issue that may be of importance to a food plant. So it's important to the consumer that he look for a very robust audit within the GFSI system.
Well, Dr. Kolb, It's fascinating how you said how audits are conducted. Can you elaborate for our listenership, which, by the way, are a lot of new food safety officers, experienced food quality officers, and new to the area food production managers? How are these audits conducted?
Well, normally you elect to do them about 6 months out. A properly conducted GFSI audit, of which SQF is one of them, usually takes about a year to properly develop, put together, and to demonstrate robustness in the last 6 months of the effort. And so at about 6 months out, you'll choose a certifier, and 30 days prior to the audit date, which the plant manager normally with the auditor will choose a date, you'll send them what's called a desk audit, or a CD, with every one of your programs, policies, all the documents you're using. For a small food plant, this is somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 to 600 documents that are all controlled through a master register. And the inspector, or the auditor that is, will inspect your CD with your desk documents in a desk audit fashion, and determine that you have a system in place, the system appears to work, and they may come back in that 30 days and ask you a lot of questions regarding documents they should see, they don't see, regarding things that they're expecting to see in the way of standards or document control. Once they've satisfied all those questions, they will show up at the predetermined date and time, and they'll begin their on-site audit. Now, the on-site audit is very interesting because they're normally not less than 2 days, normally no greater than 5-6 days. But within this period of time, the auditor has a prescribed method for conducting the audit. He has to spend so many hours interviewing people, so many hours checking the quality system to see if it does work, so many hours looking at various programs within the quality system to see if they demonstrate the validation, verification, check and balance that they should, looking for tangible results, looking for objective evidence, correlating all this information, and then coming up with an audit status, which results in an audit score. Now, what's kind of important, not kind of important, but what's very interesting with regard to these GFSI audits is you don't necessarily get a score out of them. What you get is a pass, or something less than a pass, such as a conditional or a needs improvement, in the sense that there's still corrective action to be taken. But at the end, you either pass it or you don't pass it, and you have a period of time, usually 5 to 15 days, maybe 20 days, to make corrections to the deficiencies found. These corrections are reviewed by the auditor as a pass or not. And if they're not, they can become a major deficiency or a critical deficiency. You could fail the audit at that point, or they may be held over until the next year, where they get upgraded to majors from minors. Usually there's no minors left over from majors left over from year to year, or criticals, obviously. And so everything it has a strict accountability system to ensure that your system is functioning as designed.
Well, you know, it's interesting how you just used the word strict in your last sentence. Why are these SQF audits so strict?
Well, SQF audits like BRC audits or global gap audits are not so much strict as they are, they're in compliance with the standard. In other words, they comply to the standard. You can't make a tougher standard, you can't make a stricter standard, you can't make a more complete standard. If a standard is written correctly, you have to meet that standard. A good example is, say, the use of the bathroom for good hygiene practices, GHPs, hand washing. How does the organization demonstrate hygiene practices in a restroom? Well, one of them is through hand washing. So you have a policy that people wash their hands. You have a procedure for washing hands. You have a specification that says they have to use soap and hot water, and they have to scrub in a certain fashion for a certain amount of time. And then you probably have a report that says a certain percentage of the populate was inspected and found to be in compliance, and then how often they need to be trained based on the critical or intensity of the activity, the trends where maybe a number of people don't wash their hands correctly or miss something in terms of soap. And then how is that analysis conducted so that you have a complete operating system? You can't make that more strict. In other words, if you have to wash your hands, making the standard more strict is not something like washing them longer or washing them twice or using some high-powered, high-energy soap. Do they conform to the standard? And where you can make something stronger or maybe simply comply with the standard at a minimum level would be what is the risk involved. So in terms of hand washing, if you're handling baby food, hand washing is exceptionally critical, and you need to have certain safeguards put in place to ensure that people don't contaminate their hands on the way back to the workstation. Whereby with, say, something of just canned goods, hand washing may be done in a minimal manner because food doesn't enter the equation at all, and you'd write your program accordingly. So it's a standard. How is it applied according to the risk involved? And then how do you report that to ensure that it's being done per your specifications, procedures, and policies? So there's not something that is, say, strict per se. It's whether it's robust, it's a continuous improvement program, and it complies with the standard to achieve a prerequisite program requirement that leads to a complete food safety program.
Well, Dr. Kolb, my reading of your experience is that you've actually consulted many companies on preparing for an audit. You've also conducted these audits. What are your key points on how to consult someone to achieve 100% or a passing score on SQF audit?
Well, there's one thing that's absolutely important more than anything else, and that is, has the organization from the president or the owner on down bought into doing a GFSI audit? If you don't have that complete buy-in along the entire chain of command, from the top dog to the guy who sweeps the floor, you're never going to truly achieve the tenets of a robust system. So number one, is this totally supported by the organization? And that's not only saying, yes, we'll do this, but it comes down to, yes, we'll do this as prescribed, we'll commit the resources necessary, and we will fully be accountable for our failures within this. Now, in a checklist audit, it doesn't matter if you have buy-in, it doesn't so much matter if everyone completes it or not, because it's a very loosey-goosey type of audit. Even though there are good checklist audits conducted, I'll give you that, but when compared to a true quality system, they look very, very weak. The second most important thing, I think, is when you go into these is to sit down and to determine what is the objective of the organization, because that's going to drive the development of this program. While it's robust and it must have a check and balance, if the organization desires to use it to simply satisfy a client's need, that's one factor. If they're doing it because they truly want to upgrade their entire production program, that is another factor. If they're doing it only because their neighbor's doing it, or they're doing it because it appears that it might help them on the quality side, all those things give you an idea of how long it's going to take to implement, how to implement it, and in which direction it needs to go in terms of what it's focusing on. This third most important thing, I think, is to throw out the old system. Now, I've got a number of clients who have built SQF systems over 3 or 4 years, and have decided that that system now could be stronger, but they don't wish to build on a system that after 3 or 4 years has been bandaged, and new personnel really don't understand it. And they've actually taken something that's taken 4 years to develop, where they've achieved 80-90% good scores, 95-98%. They've thrown them out completely and started from scratch. And if you have an old checklist type food safety program, you're going to find, and I get a lot of pushback on this, that you really need to take the entire old program, and as you implement the new SQF program, by example, to begin throwing away the pieces and parts from the old system, because they just don't work anymore. There's very, very little, almost nothing you can salvage from a old food safety program. And I know that hurts a lot of people's feelings because they've got a lot of time, and it seems like a simple way to do things, but they often are not transferable to a new program. The next thing that's most important is to develop a very clear and concise, and I'll use the word strict, document control system, whereby every report, every specification, every policy, every program has a set template, Everything falls into one of these 4 templates. These templates are recorded or documented. They're on a master register, and virtually everything that's generated within the company is set into these templates, follows the formats within the templates, follows the concept of standard policy, procedures, specifications, and report. And then most of all, or the last thing, is to ensure that this document control system actually works to continue renewing itself through a process called ECN, or Engineering Change Notices, so that as a change occurs or a deficiency is found or a root cause analysis has pointed its finger towards a deficiency that is important to consider and perhaps correct, there is a way to input these corrective actions into the system where everybody coordinates on the ECN, everyone agrees to the wording of the ECN, and then the document is changed within the system. Probably the toughest thing to do of all these critical points is training, and making sure that people are seriously trained to execute the SQF exactly the way it's written. So between getting organizational buy-in to executing the program are a lot of tough, hard steps that are slow in the beginning, are tough to answer in the beginning because people don't know the answers, but most importantly, take time to execute. And a good GFSI program will take a year, quite honestly, to flesh out all of the weaknesses, capitalize on strengths, get people's buy-in, and to work well day in and day out so that it becomes a very transparent process.
Well, Dr. Kolb, those steps are fascinating, and I'm sure that many in the audience have gleaned a great deal of benefit. In the short time that remains, can you discuss what is an audit shadow, and how would that benefit a company looking forward to an audit of the types you've been talking about?
Well, an audit shadow is something you and I get after about 12 hours on the job. In all seriousness, an audit shadow is when there's 2 or more inspectors that have come in. One of the inspectors is training, and they come in and watch the actual inspector conduct the audit, or they themselves are being graded as they perform the audit, and they're being shadowed by an experienced inspector. People should not be afraid of this if it's requested of you, because it's not double teaming the organization. It's just allowing an inspector to take advantage of another inspector's experience. The second inspector who is observing or maybe critiquing the inspector are not critiquing you or evaluating the organization whatsoever. So it's a necessary evil. It's very hard to do and schedule these because people are afraid of them, but it's something that must be done. And so many times the audit agencies will give you a break on the price if they're allowed to shadow or bring in a second inspector.
Well, Dr. Kolb, isn't an audit shadow at sometimes when an auditor comes into your facility and this consultant acts as a consultant representing the company, explaining to the auditor what has been going on so that the auditor doesn't misrepresent or misunderstand the standards being met in compliance?
Well, that's just a consultant. There's a number of very good consultants out there. I seem to think that the High Sierra Group has a corner on good consultants. But they come in, they help you develop the program, and what they do with the inspector is they assist the understanding on the inspector's part of why something is built the way it is. They may clarify a point as a third party or an honest broker. They may also be a prosecutor or a defense in terms of what particular turn the audit has taken. I always believe that there should be the consultant involved who has helped develop the program as part of the inspection process. Because they may know the program better than the actual client themselves, given the size of these programs and the fact that the first or second audits are very, very difficult until some time has passed when the organization truly understands what they're doing.
Well, Dr. Kolb, in the few minutes you have before you have to run off, I'd like to wonder if you could explain to us the services that are offered by High Sierra Group and Ceres International.
Well, technically speaking, the High Sierra Group, if we assist people with consulting for a GFSI inspection, which we're doing quite a few of those, can have no part of the inspection or audit service conducted by Ceres International, which is a company of the High Sierra Group. So if we're involved in building an inspection for someone, we can't be involved whatsoever in the certification process. But if we're part of the certification process, then we'll come in and we'll certify you according to our ISO certifying body standard in one of the particular GFSI certifications that we're qualified to do. Currently, we are qualified to do the Primus GFS, and soon, within a month or two, the British VRC. After that, we're going to be looking at SQF and Global Gap. So we can do those certifications. We have a very experienced staff that I think is very fair and just, and won't leave you wondering if the inspector really understood your business or not. On the other side of the coin, if you don't wish to have the certification service, we do provide a full complement of very, very experienced auditors to help you with the least amount of resources spent, develop a very efficient GFSI program.
Dr. Kolb, I'd like to express my thanks for your appearance today and your meaningful contribution, and allow you to close with any other additional comments.
I really believe in the GFSI program. I think it's the way this industry needs to go. If they're done correctly, if they're done with full heart and knowledge that this is a way to run your production plant, then I think a lot can be gained from this. I know the industry needs this type of quality audit, and I certainly hope they continue to embrace it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kolb. Bye now.
Thank you, Andy.